In this video I'm gonna show just how a few things work in my new models pack. Mainly just the material, and I've also added a blueprint that kind of shows or kind of allows you to place things, like that. So the material kind of basically allows you to do some various things that you know just for variation. um, so I've got some master materials. This is the real complicated one. This does the lights, and yeah, it kind of does it looks more complicated than it really is. Essentially it's just a few layers of different types of materials. It goes basically from metal to rust to paint from the bottom up, and allows you some tweakable things. I did include these variation materials just to show kind of, I just kept them in there, so that's a little bit of a reference. But just gonna take a real quick look through this. So this is the material, yeah. So I've got a map that's got the edges highlighted, the corners highlighted, so that things can happen based on the corners of the thing. And then there's also an ambient occlusion map that's used for like dirt and stuff like, so you can see the dirt on in the corners there. The main thing really, I mean, like reading through here, this should be pretty self-explanatory. This list looks long, but it's generally like whatever times 3 or whatever. So there's just a bunch of the same stuff controlling the different layers of the material. So the main thing will be, of course, the paint. That'll be the first thing that you'd want to probably tweak. So the chip size is these little chips, paint chips, and then I've got a sharpness there. Generally don't need to tweak that too much. You can if you want. And then the dent strength and depth is also something like, if you the spread is probably one of the first ones, but if you change the size, then you might want to tweak the way that the dents work as well. So the spread will make it so you see there, I take it away or I bring in more, so that'll go all the way to rust basically, or back. And so if you bring in more rust, you might want to size it up. However you want to do that, then you can see the dents are too heavy, and you can make the depth down, and you can bring the strength down and stuff like that, so you can make it appear a little bit more normal. So there's still a little bit of highlight on there, but it's not as bad. So just to show that if you want to tweak the way the chips work, then you'll have a combination of other stuff that you might want to tweak as well, and it's there. The other stuff is mostly like whether it's metal or not, or the roughness or stuff like that. So pretty simple stuff to do. I just wanted to kind of show that real quick. So the thing that I really wanted to show more in the video is the blueprint. I sort of consider the blueprint as just a bonus thing. It's probably not, like, I guess, perfect by any means, but it does the job pretty good. So but I just wanted to kind of show a little bit of how it works, what to expect, and so on. So you can see the idea is draw a spline, put the meshes, put the models on the spline, and that's it. But it does a few little extra things. So you can see these blocks underneath is like those ones don't have it, and these ones do. So that's part of the script where do a bit of a check on the ground to see if it should get a block or not. It's basically based on where the normal changes. That's because I didn't want to push the poles into the ground and then lose the base of it. So this is kind of a way to deal with that. And you've got some control there, like you can either have them or not, and when you add them, the script will actually push up the pole so that the block goes into the ground but the pole stays above, and it's done based on a certain amount so that generally the block will be sticking out of the ground. You can see on this side it's just out, and on this side obviously, because this is the slope side, and then it'll be based on some numbers that'll try and do it like, so you see this one lifts up much less than this one needs to lift up, for instance. The numbers generated there is like based on the severity of the slope and how much it needs to lift up the block and stuff like that. So that's something that I wanted to do for this, because it's tedious and time consuming to sit and do that manually. I consider something like street lights to be more like the equivalent of rocks in a game, where they are there because they need to be, but you don't want to spend all your time putting them in. For rocks and stuff like that, you kind of paint them in sometimes, or use some automated ways of just generating loads of them, and in some cases you'll come in manually and do some work there, but you don't really want to make that your life's work. So I see this is kind of the same thing. So if you have a bunch of city streets that you want to quickly put down hundreds of lights, and the streets go up and down and stuff like that, hopefully you shouldn't have to worry about that too much. You just draw the spline, and it just does the job for you. So so kind of the way it works is to drop it in. By default, it's gonna not really do much. So you drag it out. I'm just gonna drag it out this way so it goes over the hills there. You tell it how many lights you want. Now this obviously is overkill. You'll never have this many lights so close together probably, but yeah, anyway, if you want you can. So obviously there, the model, you can pick another, you can pick any model really. Let's do these ones for a change. So you've got some, let me actually do this one. So all the A models is the double light, and then all the B models is the single light. So you see they go a little bit random there. So I've got a bit of a random thing. So with lights that are sort of symmetrical only on one axis, like this one, it'll do the randomness based on a 180 degree, and you have control over that. So you say use random 180. So if you disable that, it'll go random on 90 degree instead. So you can use that for lights that are symmetrical on both axes, X and Y. Go back to the single one. So for a case like this, you'll just switch off randomness, right? Switch off the randomness, and then I mean, that looks skew because the spline is actually turning a corner there. Let me just do that. So so it's actually following the spline, and then do that. And you can actually disable that as well if you want, like if you just want to stuff straight for some reason. And then you can also, like it's pointing in now, but let's say you want to point it the other way, you can just go -90 or whatever. Like you can manually type in a rotation value there. So but so the major part of the script is dedicated to getting things, or not a major part of the script, but a big part of the reason for the script is so that you can easily place stuff on uneven ground. And so that's what the project models is for. So I've got so this is essentially like a switch, and if you click it once, it'll run it, and then it runs once, and then it's done. So that'll basically project the models, and you leave it there, and you're done if you're happy with it. And like I said, like inside the calculation, it will check where it needs a base. So if I move this more, so this, okay, so there's a little bit of a thing there as well, but so no, those two doesn't have a base because those two are on the flat ground. If I move this mostly to the flat ground, you can see only a very few of them has a base because, you know, the only ones that sort of need it. So you can do that, draw out the splines, or draw out the spline and dial in your, you know, the amount of lights that you want. Let's say you want to go crazy a little bit. There's no limits there, so be careful how you drag this. You want to crash the editor. So put in your lights, run the projector, and it'll add the bases for you and do all that. So you see those ones are generally on a flat plane, so they won't have a base. So there's a little bit of you know, error there, like a margin of error there, so that it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly flat. It can have ever so gentle slope, and then it won't have a base because it doesn't really need it there yet. But these ones, clearly it needs the base, right? So then I also have this dynamic projection, which will run the whole time as you drag this thing around. So I obviously have that off by default, so you don't you know, do something you know, on this by like add a million things and then try and drag this thing around. But so it'll just place it. So I mean, maybe in general you will want to work this way, but yeah, you know, just as an option you can sort of do that. Now you see the spline is still kind of where it was, and you know, you can edit the points as well, and that's fine. So maybe in a you know, in a perfect world you want the spline to actually follow the thing, and you can have that, but the editor has some kind of a bug where it'll basically crash if you reproject the spline, generate a point for each thing and reproject the spline onto the surface. And so I don't use that I mean in real time in the editor anyway. It's actually doing that right now, but it's not allowing you to edit that version of the spline. It, you know, it keeps this original spline as the editor version of, you know, the editable version of the spline. Yeah, so for, you know, for stability reasons, I don't enable that now. It doesn't stop you from enabling it yourself if you want that. and I'll show you how to do it, and it's very simple, but be aware that you could crash the editor pretty easily this way. So really all you have to do is one thing. The thing already, the script actually already works, but you come to your spline component and you switch on input spline points to construction script. So enabling that will actually allow you to see the spline generated by the construction script instead of your original spline. So immediately you see there, because I've got dynamic projection on, the new spline there, and you can see the spline. So that's essentially the spline that's being used to place the poles. But with that setting off, you don't see this spline, you see your original spline. Now when you want to edit this spline, you're actually going to edit this new spline. And this can cause some headaches here. So we can so when you actually edit the spline, now I'm gonna do this, and it's probably gonna crash, and then I'll probably end the video as well. But so when you try and edit the spline is really when things go wrong. So I've got dynamic projection on. If I switch that off, it's gonna give me a little time before it crashes, because then I'm gonna run the script by going project models, and then it's probably gonna crash. So if I extrude, like I can do this, and it's probably gonna be fine, right? I can drag it around and stuff like that. But if I edit this thing and I go, okay, I'm just gonna switch that off. If I go and I hold down Alt and drag to add a new point, and I keep this point selected. Now I'm going to show this. So I'm going to deselect the whole thing and then reselect it and switch that on, and it's fine, right? And I can edit this and it's fine. But if I do this again, keep this point selected and now reproject it, it's going to crash. Boom. Okay. So just to show that you actually do have the ability to use that feature, but I don't have it on in the script, and I'm merely showing it in the video to show that you can use it if you need it, if you feel you want it or need it. But be careful with it, it will crash your editor. It's especially true if you are busy editing the vertices themselves. If you and you use the dynamic, because if you keep using dynamic projection, it's going to keep running this script, and so immediately when it's going to crash, it's going to crash. But if you switch that off and you edit the you edit the vertices, you deselect the thing, you reselect it, and then you update it, that kind of works, right? So yeah, I think that's it. I just wanted to show that you know, there's things, and you know, actually I didn't actually show everything, but I mean a lot of this is very self-explanatory. You can add some light sources, you can in a case where there's double lights like this, you can add a second source, and then you can add the Y offset there for it. You can say whether you want to cast shadows or not. Let's go. a little brighter. Cast shadows. You've got the Z offset. Let's go. You can change the light color. You can change the cone angles. These are all spotlights. I decided to go spotlight so that you have a little bit less impact on the scene around you using these lights. It's more focused towards the bottom of the light. To see the cone, you just have to deselect it. That just seems like that's what the editor wants. You do have control there over the cones. Yeah, I mean, stuff is kind of, like I said, self-explanatory. The only other thing that I wanted to mention is, by default, these models are going to be placed as single static meshes. The lights, the bottom, the concrete things, are going to be instances, and you also can make the lights instances by checking this use instance box. So now all these are actually instances. If you uncheck it, they're just single models. So you have a choice there based on your project and where you use them and how you use them. If you want instances, you don't have to go and script it yourself. I just have the choice there, so you can just swap it over to instances or models. So the biggest difference is how the LODs work, and then of course the draw calls. So that's sort of your give and take there. So do you want better LOD support, or do you want less draw calls, right? So if you go instances, you have less draw calls, but you'll have essentially more polygons, because when you sit over here, the LOD isn't actually going to kick in, because this is actually regarded as a single mesh, technically. So you have to come back way further for the LOD to kick in. And if you use models, of course, you have more draw calls, but all the lights like back there will be LOD'd way down in poly count already. So that's kind of the thing there. But I mean, lights, like I said, like they're generally not this close together, and you can judge it by by what works for your project. Same with the light sources. I have a little bit of script that if you use this blueprint, if you have your own blueprint and you're going to do the lights and you can switch them on and off, that's fine. But I also support it inside of this blueprint. And so in the main event graph there, I've got a little demo setup where if on begin play, the lights will turn on and then off again, just to show. So they're on now and they turn off again. So you can call this function to turn on the lights, and you can set the brightness level if you want. And then of course you can call this one to turn off the lights, and that'll work on both the materials. And if you happen to have light sources in there, if you actually added some light sources, so let me just demonstrate that. Let me just make them a little brighter even, so they will start on and go off. So the light source is also set up to basically LOD out like that. And if you feel like that's a little too aggressive or whatever, or not aggressive enough, you can change that in the blueprint in the add lights section. Sorry, or actually it's a macro, so create light in the spotlight component. So unfortunately this isn't exposed, like I couldn't make my own setting for it. The performance, there we go. The max draw distance and the fade. So I can expose those as settings in here, but they are there. So if you're used to working with blueprints and stuff, you'll kind of figure that out for yourself. But if not, then it's there. I think that's everything. I keep forgetting things, but again, you can change the model. You can also change the base model. I do include 4 bases. They're just slightly different, like the look of them is just slightly different. Like if you don't like the look of this one, then you can swap it out for another one. Like one with cut off corners, and then there are ones with basically a round. So this one's sort of shaped like this, the top part of it. And then there's this one's square with a round top, because they're also round poles with round bases, so you can sort of have a round top there. And this one is sort of square with a round top, or like 8-sided with a round top. Yeah, so I think that is now actually everything that I wanted to show. Yeah, so yeah, if there's any questions on this pack or anything like that, either leave a comment in YouTube, or if you bought it, then on the marketplace there's my support email address. Mail me on that. It's you'll have probably a much better chance of me getting that than through the marketplace comments. I have no idea when marketplace comments are posted, and I don't actually check them every day. I mean, sometimes weeks can go by and I forget to check them, but yeah, so email is the safest bet, or post on the YouTube comment section, because I actually get a message saying that I have a comment. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching if you got this far, and hope if you do buy the pack that it meets your needs and it's easy to use and all that. So yeah,